Video is starting. Is that what? I never know for sure when these things are starting. So, for those of you who remember Paul Harvey, whenever I would stay with my grandparents, it was every every day at lunchtime. They would turn on the radio, and we would listen to Paul Harvey and the rest of the story. And I definitely can't do his persona in this whole thing, but Paul Harvey, Rush Limbaugh wished he could have been as good as Paul Harvey. And I loved Rush, especially in the earlier years. Later, I got to where I couldn't listen to him anymore. And just probably saying that name is going to get this shadow banned, but we will see. So I need my tin hat. It is Tin Hat Tuesday, so let's get the tin hat on. All right. And I thought today, I kind of went through the list, and I closed out of it. I went through the list. On Wikipedia has a list of conspiracy theories, and I kind of went through the list, and I'm like, a lot of these would take a lot more conversation than what I really want to take as far as time in the video. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. And some of them I would like to be able to like show pictures and maybe even video clips and things. So whenever I learn how to do that, we will maybe do some YouTube tin hat videos where we have a little bit more engagement and I can actually show some things. And I'm not saying everything on that list is correct. If you've been watching my Tin Hat episodes here, then you know that every conspiracy theory, and I'm just going to say it this way, nearly every conspiracy theory that I know of has some grain of truth that it's coming from. There is something that has spurred people to question the narrative. And if you happen to get on YouTube, Shelly, the redheaded homeschool mom, she has a Question the Narratives series. Her channel is called No Place Like Home. It's really, really good. She's got homeschooling tips, and then she has this Question the Narrative thing that is just kind of interesting, and I like the way that she presents it. And she's a Bible believer, so that's helpful. It's always nice. A lot of the things that you will find on YouTube, they're not Bible believers, and they tend to be hard for me to listen to. I can only handle so much blankety blank blank and in some of the stuff, you know. But I thought going through that list, there's just way too much, and there's just too many things that take a lot of conversation. And my whole purpose in this is to have fun, first of all, and then to help us think through some of this. Summer and fall are fighting with each other right now, and it's causing allergy issues. So please do forgive me on the whole thing going on here. So I just wanted to read this. This is wonderful. Not long after Paul and I were married, Paul ran into this and got it on cassette tape. I can't remember. I think he might have bought it and had it mailed to him. And he asked the preacher to play it during church. And the pastor that we had at the time was really nice and trusted Paul enough to actually play this. Because you wouldn't think of Paul Harvey as being something that you would want to play as a special before church service. And that is what it became. And I've seen it make its rounds off and on through the years. And I saw it recently. Somebody made reference to it recently. But Paul Harvey, and this was before me, In 1965, April 3rd, 1965, on ABC Radio, he did this little thing, If I Were the Devil. And maybe you've heard it before. And I'm not necessarily real good about reading out loud, so bear with me here. And I will put a link in the comments to this PDF where I'm reading it off of. If I were the devil, if I were the Prince of Darkness, I would, of course, want to engulf the whole earth in darkness. I would have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population. But I would not be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I would set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. And this is from 1965. I would begin with a campaign of whispers, with the wisdom of a serpent. I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. Do as you please. To the young I would whisper, the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what is bad is good and what is good is square. 1965. In the ears of the young marrieds, I would whisper that work is debasing. The cocktail parties are good for you. I would caution them not to be extreme in religion, in patriotism, or in moral conduct. And the old I would teach to pray. I would teach them to say after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. If I were the devil, I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anyone else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. And then, if I were the devil, I'd get organized. I'd infiltrate unions and urge more loafing and less work, because idle hands usually work for me. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. And I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Let those run wild. I would designate an atheist to front for me before the highest courts in the land, and I would get preachers to say, she's right. With flattery and promises of power, I could get the courts to rule what I construe as against God and in favor of pornography, and thus I would evict God from the courthouse, and then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress, and then in his own churches. I would substitute psychology for religion, and I would defy science, because that way men would become smart enough to create super weapons, but not wise enough to control them. If I were Satan, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg, and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I would take from those who have, and I would give to those who wanted, until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And then my police state would force everybody back to work. Then I could separate families, putting children in uniform, women in coal mines, and objects in slave camps, and objectors in slave camps. In other words, if I were Satan, I'd just keep on doing what I was doing. And then he always ended with, Paul Harvey, good day. You can see from 1965 a lot in here that is talking about the, they had just come out of war, World War II, Korea, and there's a lot of that in there. But we could change some of this around, putting children in uniform and women in coal mines and objectors in slave camps. What if we started dressing our children and our women in clothing that looks like it's worn out before it's even bought? To degrade what we consider as, what used to be considered as classy and respectful. And there's just so much that a person can do with this. Not only has the Bible become myth at this point, but so much history has become nothing but myth and legend. The victor's always the one that writes the stories, right? Well, and at this point, there's a rewriting of that even. So it's not even written by the victors. It's written by those who want you to think a certain way about it in the first place. So anyway, I won't give much more commentary on this. I will leave a link in the comments so that you guys can read this yourself. Where this comes from, it's grandcatholic.com. Of course, I'm not Catholic, but it gives some Bible commentary, some Bible verses, which that applies to everybody. There might be some things, if you're not Catholic in here that might not. It looks like it's got mass schedule and everything. This was in one of their newsletters, it looks like, Church Bulletin, in 2019. So kind of a gem, but they had this in their church bulletin in 2019, and I think our church actually played it in it would have been 1990 something, the early to mid 1990s. Probably it would have been before 94, probably 1992, 1993, somewhere in there. So anyway, yeah, I think about that, whenever we're thinking all these conspiracy theories. I'm not ever saying that the government's against us or the Illuminati is all, in control of everything. God is in control of everything. And Satan wants to be in control of everything. And it says in the Bible that we're fighting against principalities and powers, not against people, not against flesh and blood. So we need to keep that in mind as we are discussing, debating, arguing, or, whatever with other people about various platforms that are happening these days. If you're a Bible believer, then you need to go to the Bible and you need to find out what that says and go on there. And if somebody disagrees with you on something, all you have to do is give it to God and say, that's not what the Bible says. I'm a Bible believer, and that's not what the Bible says. And they really can't argue with that. All they can say is they don't believe the Bible, or they don't want to believe that part of the Bible. I've had people say that before. That, oh yeah, they believe that the Bible, they just don't believe that part. And it's like, well, that's where I stand, and I don't need to say anything more. Whenever Jesus argued with people, he didn't give them a long old speech whenever he argued with people. He gave a long presentation whenever he was talking to believers and people actually seeking him. He didn't give a long presentation to those who were opposing him. So we need to really, I'm talking to myself here, we need to really consider that and be careful with what we're saying. We need to speak truth, but we can do it without compromise and without going overboard too. If they're receptive, they'll receptive and they'll ask for more. If they're not receptive, it doesn't matter how much more you give them, it's not going to make them more receptive. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. This is a little different tin hat thing. Post your tin hat pictures because I still want to see them, and are you not brave enough to make your tin hat and post a picture of it? I mean, I've even said you can put the tin hat on your dog or cat. I mean, come on. We should have some tin hat pictures here. So anyway, I'm going to let y'all go. We will see you later.